Joining me, Maryland Democratic Congressman John Delaney. He's one of the lawmakers behind that bill. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us. What is the goal here? And talk to me about why you need this to be bipartisan, even after House Dems take over in January.
Well, the goal is to obviously deal with climate change, which is really a very significant threat, as you said, Katie, to our prosperity, to our national security in so many levels. And the reason it's important to do it on a bipartisan basis, first of all, we want it to become law, so we want it to not only pass in the House, but in the Senate. And we actually believe that enduring things in this country happen when there's broad bipartisan support. If you look back across this country's history, whenever we've stepped forward and dealt with a really big challenge, we've done it together. We've all worked together to deal with it. And climate change deserves that level of support. And in fact, other than a couple of people like the president, most Americans understand that this is a very significant issue, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and they want us to work together to solve it in a big way. And that's what this bill does, and I'm just really excited to have been part of creating it. I
admit that was kind of a dumb question. Of course you need bipartisan support. You're going to have a hard time, though, finding bipartisan support up and down the chambers. U.S. Senator Mike Lee was on the Sunday shows over the weekend after this congressionally mandated report came out, after all of those dire warnings, after all of the science that was presented, the agreed-upon science, and he said this. Let's listen.
Are you open to a carbon tax?
No, I'm not. All the proposals I've seen so far that would address any of these issues would devastate the U.S. economy and have little or no benefit. If we're going to move away from fossil fuels, that's got to be done through innovation, and innovation can be choked out through excessive government regulation.
So can innovation be choked out through excessive government regulation, or does government regulation force innovation, as Catherine Rampell argued in the Post?
Listen, Senator Lee's comments are very wrong-headed and are just deeply intellectually flawed, because what actually this bill does is it puts a price on carbon, which is a free market solution. Listen, I was an entrepreneur. I started 2 companies, took them public on the New York Stock Exchange. I understand how the private market works. This is a private market-oriented bill. It puts a price on carbon. It takes all of those revenues and gives them back to the American people. It is a market-oriented solution which will encourage innovation. What the private market cares about is certainty. They want to know what the future looks like so they can make investments. The private market right now knows that climate change is a big issue, and we have an uncertain future around it. This bill puts certainty around it. They'll understand what the rules are. This bill actually provides some regulatory relief. So again, Senator Lee's comment is wrong-headed, because this bill actually has regulatory relief embedded in it, and it's a private market solution. I believe the private market will embrace this bill, as they have embraced similar proposals in the past.
Congressman, you've announced you're not going to be there for this next Congress coming up in January, because you've announced you're running for president. How much this is going to be a campaign focus for you?
Well, it's a huge focus, and in many ways this bill kind of in micro summarizes what I'm all about as a candidate, which is getting big progressive things done, dealing with the challenges we have as a country, thinking about our future, but bringing people together to solve those challenges, which is exactly what we're doing with this piece of legislation. So this is an incredibly important part of my platform. I hope this bill passes the House, passes the Senate, and gets signed by the president in the next 2 years. If it doesn't, when I'm president, I'm going to make sure we do something just like this.
Well, you're going to have a hard time with this president. After all, he said on climate change, you can see at the bottom of your screen, oceans are very small.
He'll be judged harshly. He'll be judged very harshly on this issue in the fullness of time.
He said oceans are very small. Just to be clear, oceans cover 70% of the planet. Maryland Congressman John... I'm trying not to laugh.
I know, it's hard not to.
It's absurd. Maryland Congressman John Delaney. Congressman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Good luck with your legislation.